It's 8:21 in the morning, and I'm Sam Greenfield at 1160 WVNJ, and it gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce the greatest straight man in the history of comedy, and now an author, a movie star, and a writer, Carl Reiner, who's the author of Tell Me Another Scary Story, but not too scary, and Just Desserts. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Well, I'm up. That's the main thing. It's 5:20 here. What time is it in New York? About 12?
No, it's 8:22, sir.
Oh, okay.
I wish it was 12. Carl Reiner is our guest. What inspired you to write these books? These are essentially children's books. What inspired you to do this?
Well, the children's books, somebody asked me if I had a children's book in me, and I said I didn't think so. And just as I hung up, I remembered a line that a sentence that my young grandchild said to me not too long before. He said, "Grandpa, tell me a scary story, but not too scary." And I said, "Wait a minute, I got a title." And about 3 days later, I called him back and I said, "I think I got a book." And that became the first of the two that I've written. And it was about 3-4 years ago, or 5 years ago, I don't know, and it became sort of a perennial. And somebody called me this year to write another one, so I wrote Tell Me an Even Scarier Story, but not too scary.
A lot of people who write for a living, they keep hours like a working person. They get up at a certain time, they write, they have lunch, they come back from lunch, and they write. What's your schedule when you write?
A little more haphazard than that. I do put myself in front of the computer, I don't know, sometime during the morning, late morning, and I play. If something comes to my head, I keep going. If not, I walk away, come back later. But most of the time, something does come to my head.
So you write books like I do crossword puzzles?
Well, I don't know how you do crossword puzzles, but you solve problems, that's right. And books, I get a kick out of writing. I did this two or three times in a couple of books I've written. I write a first line, and I don't know what that line is. I mean, I don't know where it's going, but you keep asking yourself questions. The first one I remember, I decided I wanted to write a romantic novel. I had never written one, so I put this first line down. He didn't realize that hiring a Japanese tutor would impact his marriage as it did. And I said, okay, who is this guy? Why is he hiring a Japanese tutor? And answering one question at a time, a lovely book came out.
The book you wrote, Just Desserts, has a really unique storyline of someone who emails God. Yes,
as a joke. And he's a non-believer or an atheist, and he wishes there was a God because he has 15 suggestions that he'd like to give God. He's telling his friend, a journalist, about this. He said if these 15 suggestions were implemented, God implemented them, we'd have a better world. And his friend is a journalist, and he says, send them to me. Maybe I'll put them in the paper, and something may come of it. And in doing that, and emailing his friend as a joke, he tickles himself by writing God help me help you.com, help me now, rather. Help me help you now.com. And he gets an answer from his friend, said, I got your email. The other email, he gets an answer that says, very provocative. Somebody, obviously, out there liked his ideas. And then he finds that whoever is sending them knows more about him and what he's about and what he's thinking and his inner soul, and guides him to something that he never expected he would be going toward.
I've always wanted to. I never knew I'd have the opportunity, and we're talking to Carl Reiner. I never knew I'd have the opportunity to interview you, but I've always wanted to ask you this. What was behind the decision on the Dick Van Dyke Show to not make Alan Brady the character you played, the star of the Alan Brady Show, a more appearing character? In other words, Alan was always referred to towards the end of the run of the show. You would appear, but in the beginning of the show you were referred to but not seen. What was behind that decision? I've always wanted to know that.
Well, I couldn't figure out who might play that part, and I said, whoever we get, they're going to say he's an actor. And I wanted it to be somebody really, a real protagonist. You know, the theory of the better the villain, the better the hero. And so
Right.
I wanted to get somebody really villainous, not villainous, but not a pleasant man. And I couldn't think of who that might be. So who I might cast. So what happened is I cast myself hidden, usually by a telephone in front of my mouth or from the back of my head. I wasn't going to show who he was. I wanted people to make their own decision. Well, after a while, when there was a couple of very complicated storylines, I said, "This is not being fair to the play itself. You better see who that guy is." And I turned the guy around, and it turned out to be me. But I didn't want to do it because he only played about one every 20 shows or so. Because I was writing when I first started the show, I was doing most of the writing myself. The first 40 out of the first 60 I wrote by myself, and I didn't have time to act. So I didn't want to bother going down to the set when I could be upstairs in my office writing. So, but then after a while, I got to find help from some wonderful writers, Bill Persky and Sam Dunup and a few others, and made it easier for. As a matter of fact, they wrote the one called Coast to Coast Big Mouth that Alan Brady had a very big part in. I wouldn't have done that if I didn't have help.
The illustrations in Tell Me Another Scary Story, but not too scary, are James Bennett. And for those of you who haven't bought the book, I urge you to. The opening page, the older gentleman certainly looks a lot like you.
I love it. I love that he decided to do that. That wasn't my instructions. I said a grandfatherly type, and he decided to do a caricature of me.
Now, did you have any input into the illustrations at all?
No, only we discussed, what they may be, and he came up with these wonderful illustrations that, and I must say he's a wonderful artist. He did them in oils, so I always had to give him a good lead time because he didn't do them fast. He did them meticulously and very well. And by the way, the thing about that book that I like more than anything is that on the very first page, the old grandfatherly gentleman says, "I'm going to tell you a scary story, but if it gets too scary, tell me to stop because I love you very much. I don't want to scare you." And I love the idea that throughout the book we give the choice to the gentle reader or the gentle who's being read to, that the next page has a horrible monster. And if you're too scared, tell me I won't turn the page. And if you want it, I'll turn it. And I love that little technique, which kindergarten teachers tell me when they read it to their class, they always get a big no. Turn the page. Turn the page. They want to see what the horror is.
Did you read these books to your grandchildren at all?
No, I didn't. As a matter of fact, it came about because my grandson Nicky said to me once, "Tell me a scary story, but not too scary." I had been telling him I made up scary stories, and he liked them, but he got scared, and he told me to make. And that when somebody asked me if I had a children's book of me, I didn't think I did, but I remember that line. And then I said, "Wait a minute, I might have one."